One of the modifiers that took us quite some time to come up with is the move along spline modifier. So let's drop that down here, and as the name implies, it needs a spline to move the individual instances along. So let's zoom out a bit, drop down a curve, click this handle here, and let's draw out a curve from the bottom of our instancer here, and wire this in to the move along spline node and highlight it. Let's zoom out a bit, and you can see immediately our instances are positioned along this kind of jaggy spline. So the first thing we can do in the move along spline is, in the curve settings, just hit resample curve, which will by default resample our jaggy control points into a subdivision curve, like so. We can adjust the twist, so our instances will be twisted along the spline, and we can also tweak that twist by using this ramp down here. Also, we can set up different interpolations for our incoming splines, so we could either interpolate the straight edge, subdiv curves, or the interpolation curves, like so. Let's go with the subdivs here. And then we have three modes. In the simple mode, we can just specify a goal U, and a U on my spline is a position ranging from 0 at the beginning of the spline to 1 at the end. So the goal U defines where my instances go. But you can see it's doing this, which is a bit weird. And that is because we've got wrapped checked. So my instances will be wrapped around the spline instead of just being moved to their position. So let's uncheck this. And now we can see the normal standard behavior. That is, with a goal U of 0, all my instances are at the first point of our spline. And if I move them up to a target goal U of 1, that's the end of the spline, I can see all of my instances with a falloff value of 1 will be moved to the end of this spline here. With the offset amount, I can dial in if I want my instances to lie exactly on the spline or have them moved away a bit using their relative position to the spline. Next, we can randomize a goal, which is basically the same thing as adding a bit of randomness to our falloff. Nevertheless, we built it in here, makes for some nice effects, and we can also dial it in with a random seed number here. Finally, we can check or uncheck orient copies to curve, which will rotate our copies into the direction of the curve. The next mode is the interpolate mode. And what interpolate allows you to do in contrast to the simple mode is to blend in the rotation. That means the orientation of our individual instances. So as you can see here, by animating the goal U, when you have a look at those instances, they are smoothly transitioning into their orientation. Also, what this mode allows me to do is generate trails in the Trails tab here. So if I check Create Trails, I can now see I created trails for my individual instances here. And of course, I can also check the Fade Trail Falloff, so we get our falloff scaled from its original value to 0 down here. Let's uncheck both. And you might notice when animating this goal U parameter here, that at some points, like here, you will get some flipping. And that is because, mathematically speaking, there is no clean way of interpolating from the original instance position to any given position on the spline without knowing the previous position in the animation. And that's why we also introduced this advection mode called advect here, which is meant for exactly those cases where you need animation, so it's an animation only mode. So let's hit play and see what it does. Well, it moves our instances along the spline, animates them without any sort of flipping whatsoever. The way you tweak this is with the step size. That means how strongly each instance is moved each frame of the animation. So let's dial it up for a bit of a quicker movement. We can see now our instances are moved a bit quicker. We can also check wrap as previously. So instances are wrapped around. Of course, dial in our offset amount. Dial in how strongly and quickly we blend in the orientation values of our instances here. And of course, generate trails. So that's the move along spline modifier.